I was born in Atlanta, Texas, and grew up in New Boston, Texas. These are both up by Texarkana in the very northeast corner. My dad was a junior high principal, and my mother was a school teacher, and so I'm very much in the family business. When I went to undergraduate school at Lubbock Christian College and to Abilene Christian University, I wanted to play basketball. I wasn't good. I really wanted to play at SMU, but I wasn't good enough. I was a 6'2" forward, and SMU didn't need a 6'2" forward. So Abilene signed me and really farmed me out to Lubbock, which is a 2-year school, to learn to be a guard. I finished tearing up my knee from an old football injury and went on to Abilene anyway on an academic scholarship, and then went to UT Austin and got my PhD. And so that's the academic background of it. In Austin, Gail and I moved down there, but she and I met in Abilene Christian and got married her senior year, and I'd already graduated. From Austin, we went to California, where I was on the faculty at Pepperdine, and in some administrative experiences, and from there to the University of Oklahoma for 5 years, and then I was named the chancellor of the University of Mississippi in 1984 and stayed there till 95. And at that time, I'd been here a couple of times, trying to get my daughter to come to SMU, and I knew Ken Pye well, my predecessor. So when I learned of his illness and that there was an opening here, well, given my lifelong interest in SMU and the fact that I'd always had 4 or 5 aunts and uncles over here, and Gail and I were both interested in Dallas, it just seemed like a perfect place to look into, and so fortunately it worked out. SMU was founded in 1911 and opened in 1915. And so it was really a joint effort by the Methodist Church, a Methodist Episcopal Church South, and the city of Dallas. And most of the money came from citizens of the city of Dallas. But it's always been sort of a joint effort on behalf of the basic goals of those two entities as we move forward over the 105, 106 years. The basic approach of the Board of Trustees was to hire a president, and once that president was hired, to give him the opportunity to look at various architectural styles. I mean, it's unusual to be able to start from scratch. And so Robert S. Hyer, H-Y-E-R, was the president of Southwestern University in Georgetown. And at one time, the thought was to move Southwestern University from Georgetown up here. But the decision was made not to do that. And so their president came anyway, and that was Robert S. Hyer. And so Dr. Hyer went to Europe and all over the United States looking at different colleges, campuses, and so on. And basically came back and said that he felt like that there was nothing grander than Mr. Jefferson's building on the University of Virginia and the collegiate Georgian style that it followed. And so if you look at Dallas Hall, it is Mr. Jefferson's rotunda, an image of it, plus wings, as I've said, because it needed to be the whole university. And so I think all of us who love SMU and have been descendants of that decision owe an incredible debt of gratitude to Dr. Hyer, because there was he withstood a tremendous amount of pressure to spend a lot of that money on different buildings. And he kept saying, no, you needed a grand building to really show the intention of the founders of the university. And so as a result, we have Dallas Hall now, and it's approaching 107 years old, and yet it's still the foundation of this university architecturally and so on. And so Collegiate Georgian was the chosen architectural narrative for the campus. And the one other building that exists is Clements Hall from that era, which was the women's dorm, and we've redone it 2 or 3 times, my predecessors, to make it different things. Now it's mainly faculty offices for Dedman College, so it's appropriate there. But the architecture decision was an important decision. And when I arrived, there hadn't been a lot of building going on, but I felt like that there was a move kind of away from, in some of the buildings, from that classic collegiate Georgian. And I got the Board of Trustees to reaffirm that collegiate Georgian was the official architecture of the university, and that we wanted to follow it in a traditional manner. And so they were all enthusiastic about that. And so I have really tried to channel President Heyer in all of my time here, and tried to do buildings that were complementary of what he started. If you really look at the universities that people enjoy going to their campuses, they're consistent. It may be collegiate Georgian, they may be Gothic, like Duke or something, Southwestern University. I mean, it's now Rhodes College in Memphis, or others, but there's consistency to the architecture, and people find that pleasant. But if you don't have that as a predominant theme, architects will, and particularly renowned architects, will want to build something that is in their head and that basically is an expression of their creativity, artistry, and everything else. And so you can end up having, like a number of campuses do, just little independent buildings from an architectural standpoint that are monuments to the architects, and they may be great monuments. I mean, architecturally, they may be superior buildings, but that's not what we want to do here. And students, it's interesting. I've seen some studies that students that have campuses that are mixed, that have a traditional part and one that's sort of eclectic, like the traditional. And one of the most common comments we receive is the beauty of the campus, the consistency of the architecture, and the trees. Yeah, if we can get people to come in Bishop and loop around that way, it presents a picture. I had a term when I was going to schools and checking them out for whether I wanted to play basketball there coming out of high school. When I drove onto the campus, I could know whether there was any reason for me to check out anything beyond it. And I say that means that it's psychologically accessible. That means a student can project him or herself into being here and feel comfortable with it. The scale is good. When we built Ford Stadium, the old OMB Stadium was at ground level, but to get a bigger stadium and to get all the things it needed to have, it was either going to have to go high or part of it was going to have to go below. And so there are 25 rows below grade and there are 25 above. So when you drive by it, it's at scale. It's at scale with the Meadows Museum and all the other buildings that are on campus. So we don't want something that is huge in terms of height and doesn't fit. And so as a result, I think the board's been happy and most of the alumni family have been happy with how all this has worked out. And I certainly, I mean, when we hire architects, I tell them, it's collegiate Georgian, it's collegiate Georgian, it's collegiate Georgian. And I told one architect that kept bringing in different renditions for buildings, and I got so frustrated with him, and this was written up in a national architectural magazine, that next week I'm gonna make an announcement. And it's either that we've got to change architects because either you're not talented enough to design what we want, or two, you're just too obstreperous to design what we want, or three, you've designed what we want. And so you can have freedom as long as it's within the basic genre of collegiate Georgian. I know there was a magazine here that had a review of campus architecture here and in other places. But here, he basically said that he felt like that the university's architecture was too consistent, that the collegiate Georgian model was followed too closely, and that architects weren't given enough freedom to express themselves. And I showed that to the Board of Trustees, and I said, let me read this to you. And I read it to him, and I said, guilty as charged. I said, he couldn't have written anything that I was happier about. He got it. You know, it's got to be collegiate Georgian. Well, we have three kinds of SMU brick, and that one is the blend. But if I could tell you more than you ever want to know about it. But Harlan Crow and I are guys that like to talk about brick and look at them and so on. If you look at his new development down at the old hospital, I mean, it's beautiful. You know, I keep telling him all the time, we just need to somehow like beam me up, Scotty, beam up his thing and put it here. I think its scale is always very human. I think the richness of the red tones of the brick have an attraction. They're kind of welcoming, warming. To me, a lot of steel and concrete and so on seems hard. It seems like it's repelling in some ways. And I think the basic collegiate Georgian ethos is welcoming and something that's warm and approachable. And that's one of the words I use a lot, that the building needs to be approachable. When somebody comes up to it, they want to come in it. They feel welcome to come in it. They don't feel repulsed by it. They don't feel that it's cold, hard, and unfeeling. I think collegiate Georgian has some feeling to it. It communicates things that people find inviting. Yeah, when the campus was built, as a lot of people have reminded me, it was out in the country, and certainly it was Will Caruth's farmland and had been used that way for a long time. And so as a result, there wasn't anything here. And so when the university opened, there needed to be faculty housing and housing for people around the campus. And Mr. Caruth, a lot of his gift was set up to encourage that, because it was a half interest. So if we sold you a lot from the 700 plus acres he gave, he had a half interest in it. And so as a result, he encouraged the development of the area around it, because the campus itself, most of the campus, the heart of the campus is on the Armstrong gift of 100 acres. If you take from Dallas Hall down to Mockingbird, that's primarily Armstrong property. The university bought what's kind of north of Dallas Hall, across down what would be Daniel and SMU Boulevard, and in that area, bought that to kind of complete it. But the Caruth gift was primarily from Lover's Lane to Preston Road. Lover's Lane to Northwest Highway and Preston Road, and then Greenville in some areas, and the railroad tracks that was coming in through on others. But it was mainly what University Park is. And as I always say, unfortunately, during that period of time, to keep the university going, we sold it off by the acre, and I've been having to buy it back by the square foot. And that's not a good business deal. But when we have tried to reclaim some of the land that we need for the university, it gets pretty expensive, pretty expensive. And people remark about the parking garages too, but I think it doesn't cost that much more, usually about 15 to 20% more, to brick them. Yeah. And if you put some design in the thought of them, they all have to have an elevator shaft, and all of a sudden that becomes a prominent architectural feature. And so as a result, the last one we built, of course, is a Hillcrest garage. It's down the south part of campus, and we just settled it in between two of the older dormitories, now residential halls. And you don't really notice it. It doesn't stick out as such. They're part of what you have. And so I go on campuses all over the country and try to find ideas to steal and adapt them for what it is that we need. Anyway. When we were requested to put that on, I was very concerned that if you drove up Hillcrest, for example, on the log garage, if you drove up to it and that thing's sitting there and shining at you, then that's the main thing you're going to remember, and not the quality of the structure itself and that it fits in. So we try to hide them. Yeah, the Caruth gift is what really brought SMU to Dallas. It would have been probably in Fort Worth or some other place, but Dallas needed somebody to come forward with to ensure really the ongoing financial strength of the university. And so as a result, that land, when it was sold off, lot by lot or acre by acre, as I said earlier, really did provide not only for some of the other structures, but also for some of the operational gifts. And, the university had not really gotten started well before the Great Depression occurred. And so the Caruth property, although the selling of it had kind of dropped off, obviously, there were still some people buying, but there was also some money in the bank, and that land could be collateral. And so as a result, the Caruth gift really did bring the university to Dallas, but also it sustained the university in some really tough years. It's a stone out at the intersection of University and Hillcrest. And it's a stone with a plaque of the students who perished. And there usually there's a person that keeps that up with some flags, American flags that are there. I couldn't tell you when it was installed. I forgot to look that up. I've had people ask me about it, and our World War II, and the World War II one's over by the library, and we've also added honored individuals who were SMU students who've perished in other wars over there too, but that one is unique. Well, that's it. It's just this big stone and has a plaque with several names on it. Well, like every university, there was a drop of enrollment. We had about, I think, 2,500 men and about the same number of women, 4,500 to 5,000, and about 500 of the men left. And so the difference between 41 and 43 was about 500 men. The women stayed about the same. But in 46, 47, 48 in there were like 7,500 men that were here. I mean, it really jumped. Well, men and women, 7,500 that increased. So it was, and if you've seen pictures of it, there were just sort of little huts down south of Binkley. And every university had those. And the question became just how long were those temporary facilities going to last, because most of them lasted decades. The university had to obviously hire additional teachers and build some housing, like we talked about, that was quite cheap, that could be brought in. It was sort of the mobile homes of the era, and nearly every university had just fields of those that people, because all of a sudden in 1946, you had 4 years of students, particularly male students, just occur at once. And so, you had about 4 times what you wanted on a regular day. I think for every university, there's a mixed report on the role that intercollegiate athletics plays. We're the only country that tries to put athletic teams with academic institutions. If you look in Europe, they're mainly associated with companies or with cities or regions and so on. They're not university based. And when the yacht races and the Harvard group started, then that competition just sort of spread. And two, it's a part of the American spirit. I mean, Americans were much more competitive by nature. If they weren't, they didn't come. I mean, you had to be kind of a risk taker to come over here. And particularly in Texas, if you weren't a risk taker, you didn't come to Texas. And so as a result, I think in areas where it sort of fits the culture, it quickly tied into universities. And so as a result, I think most universities, particularly those in the South, Southwest, it was just assumed you would have athletic teams. I think right now what we see is a huge revolution going on. And this is January of 2022. And in a year to 2 years, I'd have to edit what I'm about to say because it's just turning inside out. The financial forces, and particularly those associated with the insatiable appetite of production companies for content, has just totally changed the amount of money that's involved in intercollegiate athletics and basically the goals in so many ways. But in terms of building spirit for your campus and all of those kinds of things, it plays a hugely important role. Alumni come back for games and for other kinds of occasions. There are a lot of students that don't want to go to a school if it doesn't have an intercollegiate athletics program. There are a lot of students that don't care whether it has one or not, but more do than don't. And particularly that seems to be the case with male students. There are a lot of universities that closed their football programs, for example. MIT did decades ago. And as you know, about 10, 15 years ago, they started playing football again. Mary Hardin Baylor women's school never had football teams. Now they've got a powerhouse down there in that division that they play in Division II. And so Rice, a lot of people, when they'll say, well, why is SMU still playing football? I said, well, for one thing, we're in Texas. And for another thing, it's a part of our heritage, and people, our alumni like it, our students like it. It presents its problems, as we saw through the death penalty. But as a result, though, it comes back. And if Rice needs to play football, it seems to me that the rest of us probably need to also. And so on the downside, I mean, you can't get any worse PR from athletic program than we got. Now, with this NIL work, everything that we were hit for is now legal, if done right. But it provided, when I got here in 95, that occurred in the late 80s. And so we were, 8 years away from it. And I think the burn in the Board of Trustees, and I think in the city of Dallas and alumni, for the university to become a nationally respected university, to have high quality programs, to have a national reputation, to have a student body that was, highest quality, is what fueled what we've been able to do for the last 25 to 27 years in that range. I'm in the 27th year this year. But the board made it really clear that they wanted to play intercollegiate athletics, but they wanted the university to be where the national excellence was, not as much in the athletic program. Now, fortunately, you can have both, but I think that drive, our student body was about the 70th, 75th centile when they said that to me. We're now the 95th, 96th centile. Our endowment at that particular time was about $400 million. It's over $2 billion now. The number of facilities that we had 175 acres, we got 250 and so all of the kinds of things that you've seen that people have noted has been due to the fact that that's what the board was absolutely committed to doing. When people say over your 25 years or so, what's been the key to success here? And there is one answer, and the key to that success is due to the fact that the board and the president knew what we were doing and never changed. And they have been supportive from the very beginning. And if there had been turmoil on the board, or the kinds of things you read about all over the country, this couldn't have happened. I mean, people don't give to save something from failing. People give to help something succeed. And people have known that's our goal. We want to get better, not so much bigger. We just want to get better. And as a result, I think now athletics has a great role within the university. We've got good facilities. But we're not dominated by our athletic program and our facilities. When I was at Oklahoma, I remember when I was coming down I-35, you could see the stadium before you could see anything else. And that communicated to me a lot. And in fact, when we started doing the stadium, I told the Hunts who were helping with it, of course, Jerry Ford made the major part of it possible. I said, it needs to fit, it needs to be collegiate Georgian, and it needs to fit in the university. It does not need to dominate the university. Dallas Hall needs to dominate the university. The stadium needs to fit into the university. And so that's what happened. And having the boulevard before ball games brings a lot of excitement to the campus. It brings all kind of visitors to the campus. I love seeing the neighborhood bring their kids to the boulevard and so on. I wish more of them would buy tickets, but nevertheless, they enjoy the boulevard. During the spring of 2020, this campus was Central Park. I mean, every day you could see in the morning and in the afternoon people bringing their kids out. The main quad would just be covered with blankets and kids, and it became where people could go. And I delighted in that. I wished it was our students that were here rather than neighbors, but I want people to enjoy the campus, And so as a result, I think the boulevard attracting them in, that's part of it, but it also gives a lot of students a chance to see the spirit and to meet the campus and to get around the campus. I always say the two things that introduce people to SMU are the Boulevard and the Tate Lecture Series. Because the Tate Lecture Series, we have 2,500 people there, and so many of them are people from Dallas who just want an education. They want to learn. So many of the speakers to that tell me, I've never seen an audience that paid that much attention. I said, well, they're here to learn. And if you're teaching them something, they're going to pay attention. If you're not teaching them anything, they'll be leaving early. There had been a master plan that at the very beginning, and mainly the boulevard is what it encompassed. There was actually where the Cox School of Business was a little lagoon that you can see drawings of paddle boats on or something like that, or boats rather, on, which never occurred. But nevertheless, that was the part. And so when I knew, given what the board had said, that we had to do a good bit of construction. For example, they said, we want to increase the quality of our student body. I said, well, quickly, the two places that you increase the quality of your student body are in pre-med and engineering. The worst buildings on this campus are in pre-med and engineering. Fondren biology was up in the attic of Fondren, and it hadn't been redone. Engineering had the old Caruth building and 3 barrack-type buildings for labs that went down it. And I said, you can't get them in these kinds of facilities, and you can't get the faculty, recruit the faculty in these kind of facilities. And so that's why the first building we built was the connector for the library between Fondren Library and what was called Science and Engineering Library. But that connector there that now is the main way to get in was the first thing we did. But the next one was the Dedman Life Sciences building. And Mr. Dedman Sr. used to ask me when it was built, he said, now remind me why I built a biology building. And I said, well, the reason you did is that your Dedman College had pitiful facilities for biology and pre-medical training. And he would do it just to kind of kid me that wasn't what he was doing it because we'd ask him to. And there are others that helped with that building. But and then the engineering buildings, I told the dean at that time, Andre Vacru, that we wouldn't stop until we had at least 3 brand new engineering buildings, and then we'd be going on from there, which you have over there. And so as a result, the building started out of real needs and academic programs that were important to the university. And again, as you get the ball rolling, a lot of good things happen. That's a real big deal. Patty LaSalle's written a little book that kind of details, but that was the most arduous process that I've had here. And it was because Baylor very much wanted it, and their ranch is not far from Baylor. Other schools, right? UT Austin wanted it because of the fact he had been governor and that she had her master's degree from there. West Texas was trying to, Midland and Lubbock were trying to come together to do it. The University of Dallas, even because they had a lot of land. The basic accusation was that we didn't have enough land. And we were in the process of assembling that land where it is now and where the residential commons, where it is there and the residential commons are, the new ones. But we didn't have it all done. And there were 2 individuals that got units that we had and were really asking exorbitant rates for them. And so that held it up for a long time. And as a result, it really put a lot of pressure on us because it needed to be here. And I felt like it was important for it to be on our campus. And because here he was a Texas president, there's one in Austin, there's one at Texas A&M, and the tie to this president was his wife. And the fact that they had lived here, he had owned the baseball team here and so on, but that she was an alumna. And so, and that most of his biggest contributors were from 75205 and 75225. And, but Baylor was offering 100 acres right across where their stadium is now, and in that area, and all of them had really assemblages of land. A&M would put it supposedly close to his dad's. That it was really intense, and so. But I always felt like if we could provide what any presidential library needs, and that's a sense of space and a sense of arrival, that it would work. And I also trusted her that it would look like it belonged at SMU rather than it belonged in Midtown Manhattan. And so, so there was every reason to do it, but for a while there, it looked almost impossible just to be able to get. We had 12 acres, and that's really all you need, but we knew that she wanted a garden to reflect Texas and so on, so it's really about 24 acres over there. The parking we put on the north side. We bought all those houses that were along the north side of SMU Boulevard, so we could do the parking that was there. And so it was one of the great days of my professional life when it was announced that it would be coming here, because that meant I learned a lot about the court system. It means we had worked through all those things that were being thrown at us. And again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of Ray Hunt and Mike Boone in working with me to do that. Mike Boone to do with the legal things and working out the contracts and so on in an advisory role. And Ray Hunt chaired the fundraising. And there, during the Great Recession, the goal was to raise $500 million before it opened, and we did. And a lot of it was from non-SMU people. I was sort of in charge of the SMU people fundraising, but Ray Hunt and the committee he put together with Gene Phillips and a number of others that were involved with it. Ruth Altshuler was a huge part of it. I mean, how can you have anything during her lifetime at SMU that Ruth's not a big part of? And she was. And so it was quite an ordeal while running the university too. But it's been everything we had hoped it would be. I mean, students do internships there. Families come in to see it. They want to do programs here. As you know, President Bush lectures in a class or two every semester, and Laura's on the board, and they do one thing and then another, and we have events over there all the time, and they have events here. And so Ken Hirsch, who is now the CEO of the foundation, is a great partner to have in this. And so it's the second main achievement. The first main achievement is just the whole thing of keeping the board together and staying on the same page. But the second one is getting that library. We're the only school I know of that's in 3 cities. I mean, we have 20-something acres in Dallas. We've got a couple of acres in Highland Park, and the rest is in University Park. And so when we were building the tennis center, for example, and the computing center down at the end of that, that's all Dallas. But it abuts to Highland Park, and so it's quite a challenge. But when the issue of where the Bush Presidential Center's proposal from Dallas would be from, Ron Kirk was the mayor. And there were people who wanted it downtown at Fair Park, at different other places. And Ron became mayor the same time I became president, June of 1995. And he and I became great friends at that time and have been ever since. And so he and I met, and he said, you know, you've got the ability to raise the money for this, for your alums and so on. And I don't know how we would, and we'd get into a lot of political things. And so if you will basically say that this is the Dallas proposal and that you're doing this for Dallas, I'll support that. And so that's how it happened. And so as a result, that became a working kind of relationship that was there. Now, when Laura Miller came in, she had some other ideas, but thankfully they didn't prevail. But that started that relationship. And so, and then when you start looking at the basis for the university was the Methodist Church in Dallas, and that we needed to be, again, as we're coming out of this death penalty era, that we needed to renew that commitment to Dallas. And I would do all kinds of things downtown and to try to help them and help recruit things. And one time, Mayor Kirk said, "Why are you so supportive of Dallas?" I said, "Well, you supported us, but, you know, I don't want to be at the south end of Dallas. I've got to have something south of me for me to be in the middle of Dallas. And so the north's growing, and downtown needs to flourish, and so does South Dallas needs to flourish. I need to be in the middle of Dallas, and if I don't help you with downtown, you know, I don't know what's going to happen." And so all of that, sort of the revival of the academic mission, the revival of our relationship with Dallas, and then you've had just one mayor after another who has been really supportive. Tom Leppert on up have been very supportive of that relationship. And when you see that the legal community and the business community all understand that they need more and higher quality workers, then that just, our location is great. Every big city has a good state university and a good private university. UTD is committed to doing the state university just like we're committed to doing the private university. And so we're complementary on a lot of things. I mean, we're competitive in some things, but more often than not, we're complementary. And so as a result, Dallas has a state university and a private university in the city that are committed to helping it and them grow. And it's win-win things that work out, you know. And so as Dallas helps us, we are able to help Dallas even more. And so as a result, the School of Business, you know, is now in top 20 for a number of rankings and top 30 or so for everything. Law school's great. And all these other things that we're moving along. Well, the whole Fine Arts District, one of the reasons that I'm still on that board, it's an ex officio position, but I worked a lot to try to help all of that was because that makes Meadows then sort of the training ground for the musicians and the fine arts people and the actors and so on that fill that. And so so we've worked toward that. We sometimes perform at Windspear. Many of the players in the symphony are on our faculty and teach part-time. And so it's that kind of synergies that makes us better and them better. But Meadows has become better because we have that fine arts complex down there. And Booker T is a part of that too. It just goes Booker T to us, to that facility. And so as a result, it all works together well. But we have tried to make sure that the UP clearly knows that we know where we are. And we try to work with them carefully. The mayors have all been extremely helpful and supportive. That doesn't mean sometimes we don't disagree on things, but we always work them out amiably. And occasionally some neighbors get upset about this, that, and the other. And as I asked one, I said, didn't you know there was a university here when you built this home or when you bought that home? I mean, you get 12,000 people, 25 and under, there's going to be some noise. But we try to be cooperative with that and everything. But the city council and the mayors of University Park have been great partners. And so, you know, whether it's fire or police or we help their police, they help our police, you know, it's a synergistic process. And fortunately, we have a city that we really are partners with. What I've tried to make the identity of SMU, and not make it, but continue and accelerate it, is that SMU is an academic institution that has a very positive attitude. It can be done, be up and at 'em, you know. The whole idea of a positive approach to life, and what has basically funded Dallas's, fueled its growth, has been that can-do attitude. And that failure isn't final. I mean, you know, you get up and go again. And I've really tried to have that approach in what we do. We're not fearful. We're reasonable and rational, but we're not fearful. There have been two eras at SMU in which a lot of growth occurred, both in terms of enrollment programs and facilities. One of them was after World War II, and you can't talk about that without talking about the Perkins Prothrow families from Wichita Falls and Bridwell. I mean, if you look at what the Perkins family either gave or encouraged to be given by their friend the Bridwells, there were about 9 or 10 buildings built in a 10-year period. All of the theology quad, there are 4 residential halls that they built. They named them after friends or bishops or whatever. That beautiful chapel was built in which one of my daughters got married. A lot of other people get married. It's a signature place. And at that time, of course, where now the all sports facility is located there, but there was the Perkins Natatorium that was there. And so when you talk about all the things that have occurred during this period of time, the current period of time, that 15 years or so after World War II Wichita Falls built SMU. And, and so the Prothrow, they had one daughter, Elizabeth, and she married Charles Prothrow. And so that's why so much is Perkins Prothrow. Then the foundation is the Perkins Prothrow Foundation. But you can't really talk about SMU and its growth without also giving appropriate kudos to the Perkins Prothrow family, and through them, the city of Wichita Falls. They did a lot. We've kicked it off with this campaign. SMU was founded to be very good in undergraduate instruction and in professional education. So Perkins, law, engineering at some level, and some business, although that was to start off with in liberal arts. But the one thing that we have not developed strongly has been the graduate education, doctoral program, some of the research aspect of it. A lot of superintendents asked me to create a school of education that would do that would do educational research. They said, we've got places that do teachers. We need places to train teachers and do research on what works. So that's why we created Simmons. It's a graduate school. We graduate 40 or so baccalaureate level teachers there each year, but it's mainly for graduate work. And other programs are building up that way too. And so we've announced that we want to be a Research One institution, R1. You'll see R1 over a lot of things with this new campaign that we have. And its basic goal is to try to improve our graduate programs, particularly our PhD programs, and we have over 20 of them, and to increase the amount of research on campus and so on, and to get the quality of the graduate programs up to the quality of the undergraduate and professional programs. And so that is the next hill to climb. Elizabeth LaBoa is our new provost, and she is very committed to doing that. She was the dean of engineering at Missouri, and before that in North Carolina. And you'll be seeing that on a lot of our literature and so on. R1 is a Carnegie Commission on Higher Education category. It has 9 components to it. And so you just sort of plug in those 9 and reach that level. Many of the state schools, UTD just got it, UT Arlington just got it, and so, you know, it'll take us several years to get there, but that really is the next mountain. While we don't forget why we're here, and that's quality undergraduate education and quality professional training too.